Can you believe this girl with a horribly disfigured face was once so stunningly beautiful? 5 years ago, an accident severely damaged Molly's facial bones and soft tissue. After dozens of surgeries, Molly recovered to how she looks today. Today, she returned to the hospital for her 56th surgery. Meanwhile, the hospital admitted another girl, Karen, who was badly injured in a car accident. Karen's injuries weren't on her face, but on her brain and heart. After discussing, the doctors decided to save Karen's heart first. But by the time they began surgery, her brain had lost all function. She was declared brain dead, which devastated her mother, Shannon. The poor woman had lost her husband 3 years ago, and now she lost her baby. However, the doctors knew Karen's death could bring hope to people on the donor list. Dr. Andrews approached Shannon and told her Karen was a perfect match for a young girl who needed a face transplant. At first, Shannon rejected the idea, not wanting to see her daughter's face on someone else. Then she met Molly in the elevator. Molly was funny and sarcastic, and she had endured so much since losing her facial bones and tissue in the accident. Shannon decided to let go of her daughter and give someone else's child a chance. Dr. Andrews immediately called an emergency meeting for the complex surgery, which would take 2 days. The doctors rehearsed the surgery multiple times to ensure no mistakes were made. On the day of the surgery, Karen, though brain dead, still had a heartbeat. Her mother walked her out of the elevator holding her hand tightly. Outside, doctors and nurses lined up. Paying their highest respects to Karen, Shannon held her daughter's hand, kissed her forehead, and said goodbye for the last time. On the operating table, doctors drew lines on both faces, carefully cutting along them to detach arteries and facial nerves. The next step was critical. The doctors needed to remove Karen's face in one piece. They barely breathed as they worked, but the procedure went smoothly. Then came the painful part. They had to end Karen's life. The machines were turned off, and Karen stopped breathing. The doctors stood in silence, paying their respects to her. The most challenging part was next, attaching Karen's face to Molly's. The doctors carefully connected veins, arteries, and nerves. After 72 hours of tireless work, they completed the final stitches. Then came the moment of truth. Molly's cheeks slowly turned pink. A mirror was handed to Molly, who nervously took it. When she saw her reflection, it felt like a dream. Her deformed face was gone, replaced by a new one. Though her face was still swollen, she needed 3 months of rest. Molly's parents smiled with relief. Just then, Karen's mother, Shannon, entered the room. She handed Molly photos of Karen as a child. Shannon asked to kiss her daughter's face one last time, a final farewell. With mixed emotions, she turned and left the room. The fire department arrived at a structure fire. A man said there had been an explosion and that 2 men were trapped inside while working. After the firefighters got ready, they rushed into the fire to look for the 2 men. Soon they found an injured man.
How is he? I got a pulse, but he's bleeding out fast! Get him out of here!
They didn't delay and quickly carried him out. Meanwhile, another team was searching for the second man. They spotted the man, but he didn't respond. Otis noticed the man's ears were bleeding and suspected he was deaf from the blast. Unfortunately, his arm was caught in a machine. Dawson tried to lift the machine herself, but failed. Just then, Otis spotted a power switch and was about to turn it on. Suddenly, Dawson shouted, "Don't," and tackled him. Otis looked confused. Dawson explained, some machines finish their cycle when you cut the power that would tear his arm off. At this moment, another team of firefighters arrived to assist.
Throw a wedge in that gap! Nobody touch the power switch! This could be a full cycle machine!
They quickly used an airbag to successfully free the man's arm. Then they turned off the power.
Thanks.
To fight school bullying, a boy started a live stream at school, but instead, he caught the intimate relation of 2 teachers. Later in school doctor's office, he accidentally saw the doctor changing clothes. Jorah was a high school student, often bullied by his classmates. He made a helmet with a built-in camera, hoping to fight against school bullying through live streaming. But as soon as he entered the classroom, he was humiliated by his classmates. Some even threw chalk at his head. The teacher ordered him to remove the camera, but Jorah said he just wanted everything to be honest, and others had no right to remove it from him. The teacher took him to see the principal. The principal, who was smoking, quickly put out the cigarette, tried to disperse the smell, and freshened his breath. After listening to the teacher's complaint, the principal wanted to take down Jorah's camera, but couldn't. Suddenly, smoke started coming out of the trash can. Apparently, the cigarette, but wasn't fully extinguished. In a panic, the principal forgot about the camera and threw the trash can out of the window, nearly hitting a passing student. He then took Jorah to find the science teacher to borrow some tools. But upon entering the classroom, they found that the teacher wasn't teaching at all. It turned out the teacher had drunk too much the night before and was hiding in the storage room, fast asleep. The paramedics arrived at an apartment. The landlord opened the door for them. They found a woman face down in her own vomit and barely breathing. They turned the woman over. After checking, the woman had a pulse, but her respirations were only 10. At that moment, Jimmy noticed a bottle of hydrocodone. They suspected the woman was overdosing, so they gave her a Narcan injection.
It shouldn't take this long, should it?
She's burning up with a fever.
However, they discovered that Narcan didn't work. They realized it had to be something else. Just then, Jimmy lifted the woman's shirt and found she had just had stomach surgery. Sylvie said she might be septic from an infection. They immediately administered a fluid bolus. Sure enough, the woman woke up quickly.
Who are you?
Jimmy Borelli, Paramedic.
Am I dreaming?
No.
The woman said she had just had a tummy tuck. When she saw her vomit everywhere, she quickly apologized to them.
Hey, we're gonna get you to Chicago Med, all right?
Officer West, who had been on a morning run, noticed a police car quietly following him. He quickly raised his hands above his head, despite being a police officer. Without his uniform, he was just a civilian. After saw it was Sergeant Gray. He only can be relaxed. The sergeant came to him for help with a problem. Officer West's new training officer Stanton was a complete In just 3 days, Stanton had deliberately arrested several black people, almost causing a conflict. The sergeant decided to kick Stanton out of the team. He instructed West to record every one of Stanton's violations. One day, while the two were on duty, they spotted an unlicensed Range Rover. They immediately turned around to give chase, all the way to Manor Apartment, where was a very dangerous place. Ordinary cops won't step foot in without hats and bats. Soon West encountered 3 big men. Suddenly someone attacked from behind. He was quickly knocked to the ground. West's head and abdomen were vigorously kicked by them. Stanton, who witnessed everything, silently retreated to a corner, feeling a strange satisfaction as he watched West struggle on the ground. At that moment, Bradford and Chen finally arrived, and Stanton pretended to be concerned, but West suddenly raised his hand and turned on his body cam. The body cams at the station had a feature that recorded the previous 5 minutes of footage once activated. Stanton's despicable behavior was all captured and handed over to the sergeant. A call came in for a person in distress and the firefighters rushed out. A man was waiting for them under the L tracks. He showed them where a man had been tied several feet up in the air from the tracks. His face appeared to be bloody and beaten. The firefighters immediately began the rescue. Lieutenant Casey climbed the ladder up to the man whose name was Victor.
Lieutenant Casey, we're gonna get you down, okay?
But he passed out.
Don't need a shot.
Keep him conscious.
Hey, stay with me, Victor.
Casey was about to tie a rope around Victor when he suddenly slipped.
Oh! Lieutenant!
Fortunately, nothing serious happened. He quickly tied a harness around Victor and they lowered him to the ground. Then the paramedics rushed him away in the ambulance. The woman locked the boy up at night because on the full moon, the boy would turn into a werewolf. Vicious and bloodthirsty, only the next day would he return to human form. The boy would not remember anything that happened the night before, and the walls bore the scratch marks he left behind. The woman shaved his fur and trimmed his nails, allowing him to live like a normal child. A few years ago, when the boy's mother was about to give birth, the baby was already impatient to come out. Nurse Clara quickly called the doctor. When she returned to the bedroom, a hairy monster had already torn through the woman's belly. The mother had been killed on the spot. Looking at this baby werewolf, she slowly lowered her gun. Clara then brought the baby to her home, intending to raise him. 6 years passed. Under Clara's careful care, the werewolf grew up to be like a normal child. To prevent his wolf nature from being activated, Clara only allowed the boy to eat vegetarian food. One day, Clara worked overtime and left the boy at a neighbor's house. When the old lady learned that he had only eaten some bread for breakfast, she immediately made him a steak. The boy, who had not eaten meat for years, grabbed it and started devouring it, making beastly panting noises. The wolf in him was completely aroused. The woman suddenly realized she might be trapped in the mountain by an invisible wall. She could see clearly through the other side of the wall, but she couldn't get through it. However, the wall had no gaps. She searched everywhere for an exit. Finally, she saw an elderly couple. Excitedly, she tried to approach them for help. Once again, she was blocked by the invisible wall. Looking closely again, the elderly couple remained motionless. She pounded on the wall and shouted loudly, but no matter how loud her voice was, they couldn't hear her. The water in the old man's hand flowed and the leaves blown by the wind fluttered. Yet the people were like they were frozen in time. The eerie atmosphere made the woman shiver all over. She breathed rapidly, panicked, and backed away. Harry called her dog and ran back. In this way, she was trapped in the Alps for half a month. She checked the wall every day, but it never disappeared. Her colleagues who came with her never returned. One early morning, there was a sudden noise outside the door. The woman was very scared. Carefully, she got up and walked out. She opened the door, and that wall was right at the door now.